The Nintendo Wii is certainly one of Nintendo's most unique systems, as this was the first time that they really had to shift gears as far as what their overall gaming philosophy was going to be, as they started doing something different than what the other main competitors were doing. You see, in the last generation with the GameCube, they were trying to keep up with the Sony and Microsoft pound for pound for trying to get the best system out there as far as like the specs wise and all that goes. But they quickly learned though that that probably was a losing battle with companies that just have really deep pockets. So they went in a different direction this time to try to tap into the casual market and from what they call the blue ocean strategy, right? To just kind of throw like a wide net out there and see what sticks as far as, to try to lure as much customers as possible. And so what they came up with was the Nintendo Wii. And the whole main thing about this system is the controller. See, the system itself is basically just a GameCube with slightly beefed up specs, but honestly, there's nothing on the Wii that I can say that really surpasses like what you would see on the GameCube. Not to say that there wasn't decent looking games on it. It's just that they were definitely, in my opinion, as far as the graphics goes, very much sixth gen, and also the resolution was capped at 480p. So while Sony and Microsoft were starting to go with HD systems, there was definitely a downgrade right in the Wii as far as the graphics went, and especially nowadays when you try to put it up on a modern TV, the display doesn't look quite that nice just because again 480p, on a big screen TV nowadays, it just doesn't look it doesn't look very nice. But so then it was all dependent on the controller. And I remember back in the day, I was pretty excited about this controller. And ultimately, when it came down to it, it really just was kind of more of a gimmick instead of like really revolutionizing the way you play games. But it's not to say there wasn't any fun games on the Wii, because there definitely was. Like a lot of the main Nintendo games that they had on there were really well done. And it's I don't know if it's my preferred way of playing, like, for example, my favorite game on the system. So just to kind of spoil a little bit, but the Twilight Princess, but it was definitely a cool way to play it. But it definitely had some other cool games so here. And so I want to touch base on my top 10 games for the Nintendo Wii. And if there's any others that you have, feel free to let me know, as I'm curious to see what other people were playing on this system outside of the normal games, that we're all mainly used to. So there was some hidden gems on here, as I think I have a couple of these here in my list here. So hopefully this will shine a little bit of more light on some of the great games on this system. So the game that I have at my number 10 is Wii Sports. And you can't really have a full experience of the Wii without experiencing Wii Sports. So it was a pack-in title for the Nintendo Wii, and really, I mean, this was sort of the game that really brought the masses over to the system here. So again, Nintendo really wanted to cater to the more of a casual audience with this to try to lure in non-gamers, right, over to the system. And you can tell that that was pretty much their strategy when they started doing their commercials, right, where you get the two businessmen that are going over to people's houses and say, hey, would you like to play the Wii? And so you were getting like you would see the commercials right and all of just a variety of different people getting into the Wii, because it was a bit appealing right at the time, right, where you just have this controller and all you do is just swing it around, right, and so there was a certain fun lure to that, and I think Nintendo knew that, and that's why they went in this direction, so that they didn't necessarily have to spend a whole lot of money on getting the best and latest graphics, but just more the gaming experience. And so this is really what just help the system just sell millions of units. This game has been like anywhere from like retirement homes and all to just like, people that don't game. They bought the system just for this here. It was definitely a cool novelty while it lasted, but that's basically what it was, right? Because once you start playing it, yeah, it's cool at first, right? You're swinging the Wii remote around and it's kind of unique, but then it wears out pretty quickly, though, and all, right? Once you kind of realize that just how basic it is. But that doesn't mean, though, that the game wasn't fun. Wii Sports is a lot of fun, especially in multiplayer, and you'll have a lot of fun with this game here. Also, if you just don't, go into it expecting anything too incredibly deep. But sometimes it's the simplicity that helps games sell, as this is one of the top selling games of all time. Of course, a part of that is that, because it was a pack-in title, but yeah, definitely Wii Sports is legendary for just how it brought Nintendo back into the limelight. Because again, they weren't doing so great after the GameCube, but this definitely made them a big player now in the video game industry again. Just, you know, they went in a different direction this time. And, for the, kudos to them, right, for taking a risk on it. And, but yeah, Wii Sports, so just a, a very interesting game that definitely paid off. But coming in at my number two is so Trauma Center Second Opinion. One of the issues that I had with the Wii again is that the controller was a bit, it was perhaps a bit too overhyped, as it didn't really truly revolutionize gaming the way people were thinking that it might. It really is just you're wiggling the controller around, right, or doing very basic gestures, and which basically replaces like a simple button prompt. So it's not anything too completely revolutionary. But there was a few games though that actually did make unique use of the Wiimote. And one of the games that came out pretty early on, and I think it was a launch title, but if not, it was pretty close to that. And so I remember I picked this game up just because it was getting decent reviews, and I was like, well, let me see what this game's all about, because I wanted something that was going to say like, okay, let's see what this Wii mode is all about outside of Wii Sports. And so in this game here, so it has a story to it done in very anime aesthetics and all. And it's the stories it's fun enough and all, but the once you get into the actual gameplay, which is where you're doing surgery of various types on various patients, this is where it gets really fun, as the way you use the Wii mode is really genius, and you have to have like a really steady hand, as you would expect you would, right, if you were actually a doctor. So at the very least, it does give you, as a bit basic, but a good representation, right? And I'll give you the feel of like doing surgery. And that's kind of the whole point of what the Wiimote was supposed to bring, right? Is giving you a different level of immersion that previous controller schemes just couldn't do. And for that, I really like this game because for me, it's one of the better games on the Wii that really demonstrated on cool ways on how you can use the Wiimote. And it was definitely a lot of fun. And it's, it, you know, it, I don't know. When it was used right, there was times where I did appreciate playing games on this system. A combination of just the fairly accurate movements, right, and all that you can do on the controller, along with the vibration and all, and at the very least, made this game for a pretty fun experience. But what I have at my number eight is Mario Kart Wii. So another Mario Kart game, right? But it's a pretty good one too. Mario Kart games on Nintendo systems, they're just going to be fun. There's no denying that. And this one is, I wouldn't say it's one of my more favorite, and for me personally, not one of my more memorable ones, but it's definitely fun. And I've only played it a bit after the fact, right? Because I never played it back when the Wii was relevant. And so I never really got to experience this game like multiplayer and all that, where these games are truly fun. But what I have played of it and all, I mean, it definitely seems like a great Mario Kart game. So I had it added on here just because they're always a lot of fun. And I'm sure that if I had played this back in the day, especially with a lot of friends, it would have been a blast to play through. And the graphics are really nice on it. It's again nothing much more than what you would see on the GameCube, but it's still overall fun, and it's cool to see some of the Mii characters in the backgrounds there. And yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of fun. Cool power ups, cool level designs, and just an overall blast to play through. And so normally you would use the I think this is one of the games that you turn the Wiimote sideways to play on it. But there was a peripheral where it's like a wheel that you put the Wiimote in, and so then you can use that to mimic like an actual wheel. And I never played it that way, but that seems like that would be a little kind of fun to play it that way. But either way, though, Mario Kart, it's definitely a great Mario Kart game. And so if you're collecting for the system, I would advise not to skip out on this one. It's pretty good. But at my number seven, though, I have Sin and Punishment Star Successor. So on my episode that I did for the Nintendo 64, I had a game Sin and Punishment on there. And so that game it's from Treasure, and it's sort of like an on-rails shooting game, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that game there. It's a really cool action on it and all. And so this is the sequel to it, only expands on it more, specifically where you're moving the cursor around with the Wiimote. And so that does give the shooting action a sense of fluidity that just a regular controller just can't quite do. And so I really appreciated it for this game. Again, this is another game too, also that I felt made pretty good use of the Wiimote, as again it feels like a bit of a on rails, like almost like a light gun shooter game, and that's one thing that the Wii really excelled at, where we were already light gun games were already starting to die out, there was a handful here and there that gave you a sense of that kind of gameplay on the Wii, and this is one of the better ones. What I've played of it, cool action, cool level designs, cool bosses, and 60 frames per second action. And it's just a really unique, fun game. Definitely one of my more favorite on the system, even though the character designs are kind of goofy looking, but I won't hold it against it. I mean, it is really a fun game, and for me, definitely one of the more funner third party games on the Nintendo Wii. As most of the stuff that I feel that was on the Nintendo Wii that was good was first party games. There's a handful third party ones though, and all that are pretty excellent. And for me, this is towards the top of them. There, good game. Let's see. But then what I have at my number six. Let's see. I have Donkey Kong Country Returns. Oh no, wait. I'm sorry. I skipped ahead one. Let me back up a bit. At my number six, I have Punch Out. So Punch Out is they finally brought the series back as it was absent on the Nintendo 64 and the GameCube, and somehow they were able to replicate the majority of the gameplay from the old school ones on the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, only now adding some motion control where you're using the Wiimote and the nunchuck to sort of like actually jab up, right, and also that your fighter actually throws a punch, and it's cool. I do like it. I think it's interesting in concept. It just doesn't feel as responsive and precise as like just the button prompt, right, from like the previous two Punch Out games. So for that, I can't recommend it, or I can't say that it's better than the previous two that came out before. But it is still fun though, and it does seem like it slows down the boxers' attack patterns, probably to compensate for that, right? That there is a bit of a lag when you're throwing the punches and all, but it's still a lot of fun. And I believe you can actually play this game, with the Wiimote turned sideways. But it's either way, the graphics are really well done on it with its cell shaded graphics. Definitely brings these characters to life, just like the way the previous two games did. And a game that I don't hear too much about anymore, but I always think it's a lot of fun, and definitely one of the more funner games on the Nintendo Wii, just the way the previous two were for their respective Nintendo systems. Great fun. Definitely, if you have the Wii, I would check it out. You can also play it, I believe, on the balance board. So, if you happen to have that and you wanted to mess around with it, you have a few different control schemes with this game. But yeah, a whole lot of fun with this game, though. Definitely check it out. Okay, so coming back here to my number five. So that's Donkey Kong Country Returns. And so this time they gave the license to Retro Studios. And so what they came out with was a really excellent 2D platformer. And it's a lot of fun. Kind of plays a little bit like the Super Nintendo ones did back in the day, only now with fully realized 3D 2.5D graphics. And the platforming is just really fun. A lot of fun secrets to cover in the levels, everything from like puzzle pieces to like just a bunch of bananas, and it's just a whole lot of fun going on in the background there too, also with the different animations there. And the Nintendo Wii didn't have a whole lot of games like this as far as like side-scrolling platforming games, so this is definitely probably one of the better ones on the system. And wanted to give a shout out here as the game is it's a big blast to play through, running at 60 frames per second, one of the nicer looking games on the system, and definitely showed that Retro Studios weren't only the masters of doing Metroidvania 3D games, they were also doing really well with 2.5D platformers. And yeah, just a lot of fun that brought Donkey Kong back into the limelight also. But at number four, I have Xenoblade Chronicles. The version you're seeing here, I'm cheating a bit, is the one from the Switch. So this is the definitive edition version that you're seeing. I don't have access to play the Xenoblade Chronicles that came out on the Switch on the Wii originally. So if you do go back and play the Wii version, just know that the graphics aren't quite as good as this here. But they're still player impressive though, for no doubt though. But just the game itself, Xenoblade Chronicles, of what I've played of it, really outstanding. I mean, there is so much content to this game that you can just get lost in this. Only kind of like you would like in a Oblivion or Skyrim game, only now in a more JRPG setting, as it has a sci-fi setting that's really cool, where you're basically living on like these two huge robots, and so it's got a very interesting concept to it. Honestly, with this game, I haven't gone too incredibly far on it, but what I've played already of it, I absolutely love it. I've just been trying to find the time to like sit down and make this one of my main RPGs that I'm playing through. It's absolutely incredible. You'll have a great time with this game, and the music is outstanding. Made from the people that had done the Xenogears and Xenoblade Chronicle games, so you know you're in for a really deep story with a lot of philosophy and all. And I'm a big fan of those games of Xenosaga and Xenogears, so I feel like I really need to get into this series here. And this is the first one that came out. And this one actually wasn't going to come out here in the United States originally, but thanks to a petition, I think it was called like Project Rainfall or something like that, they eventually ended up porting it over here, which was great because Xenoblade Chronicles is a highly beloved series now. I'm sure it's sold really well for Nintendo, so I'm sure that they're pretty happy that they ended up porting this game over. But it did get a start on the Wii here, which is great because the Wii was pretty lacking in RPGs like this. So this is quite the standout title on it. But coming in at my number three is Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. So this takes the formula that the previous Metroid Prime games did, only now it adds motion controls to it, and it's one of the games that uses it probably in the most clever ways. So the way sometimes you interact with the certain items on screen, it's pretty cool. Like you can grab a switch, pull it, push it. You don't know, you're making the movements with the nunchuck. Or one of my favorites is when you get this lasso, kind of an electronic lasso thing, and you sort of like lash it out with the nunchuck and then pull back on it to rip something apart. It's pretty cool. And again, one of the few games that I felt really immersed you into the world more because of the Wiimote there. And now I added this one here because this is an original Metroid Prime game that came out on the system specifically made for the Wii. But really, I would also say the Metroid Prime trilogy because that one included this one along with Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2 from the GameCube, but added the Wii modes and widescreen support on it. And so I thought that was pretty cool how they did that. And so Metroid Prime trilogy, that's a really cool collection to get as you're going to get a really fun way to play these games again as the Wii mode and all definitely adds a different level of immersion with the how you aim and all. It feels really smooth and all, although it does take a bit of a hit on the camera control. But either way, though, it's a very unique way to play in the game, and highly recommend the not only Metroid Prime 3, but if you can get your hands on it, also the Metroid Prime trilogy as well too. Good stuff. But at my number two, I have Super Mario Galaxy. And Super Mario Galaxy, it's just a 3D platforming goodness. One of the best 3D Mario platformer games out there. I haven't beaten this game quite yet, but I've gotten quite a ways into it, and I love it. It's a really fun game, and definitely I feel plays better on the Wii. I don't feel like the motion controls truly bring out a next level in this game here. But I do prefer this control scheme over, like, say, like what we've got with the Nintendo Switch. That version is perfectly fine as well too. There's just little things also that you can just tell that the game was made with the Wiimote in mind, and so the Wiimote makes things a certain moves right a bit more fluid, and so this would be a good version to play. It's just while the game does look gorgeous and all, right? I mean, it's running at 60 frames per second, really colorful and all, but that 480p blown up like on a big screen TV and all that, a lot of people have nowadays, it just doesn't quite look as sharp and all. So, but if you can get over that, great game, and I would say that this is the better playing version of it. If you don't mind using again the Wiimote, again it was from Nintendo, and so they definitely put some effort into it, right, and all to make the Wiimote relevant within this game here. Outside of that, though, one of the best 3D platformers, and a little bit that I played a part two, also Super Mario Galaxy 2. I don't have it on here as I didn't want to put two Super Mario Galaxy games, but it's still an incredible game as well too. So you got that game to look forward to as well if you really enjoyed this one here, because you would definitely want to check out both of them. But yeah, good stuff. But for me, the best experience I had on the Nintendo Wii was actually a game that was originally released or originally planned for the GameCube, but then got ported over to the Wii, and that was The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. So this game came out as a launch title for the Nintendo Wii, and then a few weeks later, it still did come out on the GameCube. But this one here, so we got widescreen support, and we had the addition, right, obviously, of the motion controls on it. And I gotta say, this is the game that I was curious about because when the Nintendo Wii was announced, I was like, how relevant are these Wii motion controls going to be? Is it just going to be very gimmicky, or is it really going to give you like another layer of immersion, especially like on a really long game like this one? And I gotta say that I did beat this game all the way through with the Wiimote, and I mean, I don't know if it's my favorite way to play the game, but it definitely wasn't a bad way to play the game. And I will say that the last boss fight using the Wii Mo controller was very intense, and so I had to give it kudos to that because I was like, okay, that's pretty sick. This is pretty cool playing it this way. And so, if anything, I would say that if you really like the game, and you don't, and maybe you don't mind replaying the game twice, definitely check out maybe like the Wii U version or even the GameCube version. But don't skip on this one. Like I said, I thought it was pretty fun. And if anything, just aiming, like whether if it's your slingshot or bow and arrow, feels really fluid and smooth. And another example right now where the Wii mode actually kind of shines through as far as how you control the game. But just the game itself, right? The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess is the Zelda game that I was looking for. As well, I did really like the Wind Waker. I still kind of wanted a bit more of a mature looking Link and a bit more of a darker tone, and the Twilight Princess truly delivered. And I still wish that we would go back to this more somewhat realistic style or the more cel shaded look. While I love Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I just really enjoy this more realistic take. And so I'm hoping that at some point, whenever we get a new Zelda game, that it'll be more in this style here, but we'll see. But this game is pretty infamous too, also for when it was announced at E3, I think in 2004, where Shigeru Miyamoto comes out with like the Master Sword and the what is it, the Hylian Shield, and they showed the trailer right of Twilight Princess in itself. It's a pretty cool trailer, very action packed, and then it's set to like this song that sounds like Conan. It's pretty cool if you get a chance. Google it. I mean, there was like you could just hear the crowd just lose their shit, and I mean, there's probably grown men crying in there, but it was a pretty cool trailer though. But yeah, so I mean, like I said, the game not necessarily an exclusive completely because it did get a port on the GameCube, but it's still a fun way of playing this game and one that that this is how I remember playing the game was on the Wiimote, and it was a fun experience because of that. So I appreciated it that it gave me a different way of playing a masterpiece like this. But that's what I got here for the Nintendo Wii. Again, let me know what games you were playing on the system, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good one.